La realidad es que no vive.
Hello, Facebook Live. Hello, Equality Florida members and supporters who have tuned in tonight. It is 10:54 p.m. I am Joe Saunders, a former state lawmaker and senior political director for Equality Florida. We are coming to you in the dead of night to have a conversation with three of my favorite people in Florida politics, three of Florida politics' rising stars, to discuss what was an incredible debate. We are actually, let me make sure we have Miami Beach, Tampa Bay, St. Pete, and Tampa and Orlando all here with you today to get our perspective on how the vice presidential debate affects Florida politics, and most importantly, affects the lives of Floridians who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. I want to welcome our esteemed panel who's joining us today. We have, you know him, you love him, Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith from Orlando. There's no applause, but I'm applauding for you. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you. And if you can hear that in the background, that is Carlos's amazing, handsome husband, Jarek, who is also doing a Facebook Live today. So I'm sure Carlos will be toggling on and off of mute. We have Representative-elect Michelle Rayner from House District 70 in sunny St. Petersburg. And we have Michael Womack, who is the Equality Florida Communications Manager. Y'all, we have a ton to talk about. This was so different than the last debate that we saw, but let's start here. It is, 27 days until the election. Am I getting that right? 27 days until the election. I know everybody on this Facebook Live is doing everything we can to turn out the vote, to empower pro-equality voters, to empower progressive voters, to make sure their voices are heard. Let's do a quick round robin. How are you? How are you feeling after tonight's debate? How are you doing in this tumultuous, unpredictable election? Representative Smith, let's start with you.
Well, I'm feeling great. I am energized. I am ready to go. I know that there is so much activity going on out there to make sure that we get our pro-equality candidates elected. And I think seeing Senator Harris on TV tonight really, really helped energize so many folks who are aligned with our issues, because she crushed it. She did so great. You know, she really underscored what's at stake in this election, whether it had to do with judicial nominees, whether it had to do with criminal justice, healthcare, coronavirus. There's some stuff that was missing from tonight, but I'm feeling really pumped up about what I just saw.
I would agree with that. Oh, I jumped in too quick. I didn't know if you were signing this out.
Yeah, so I feel good. I feel I feel good. I'm glad I don't have a fly on my head. Like, I'm definitely feel like really good about that. And that
Flygate.
Yes, that my hair is like that. But no, and seriously, I feel good, but I also think we don't need to get comfortable. We're seeing polls left and right. We're seeing polls that have Biden up by 14 points and 10 points. And, I know it sounds wonky, but it's so true. Like, the only poll that matters is when people actually get out and they vote. And that is what needs to happen. So while I feel good, I am still vote, make a plan to vote early, vote by mail. If you vote by mail, watch that thing to make sure it gets to where it needs to be. And so that is where I'm at. But I'm encouraged by Kamala Harris. She is a tremendous Black woman, and hashtag trust Black women. And so I feel good. She did really good tonight.
Michael, how about you? How are you feeling? I know you have been working hard, not just to put this together, but to launch some incredible programs that I know many folks, if they haven't gotten, will see soon. How are you feeling about tonight?
I feel great. I think that Kamala brought the energy that we needed tonight. And I think that she and I are ready to send Mike Pence and his fly packing. That's all that needs to be said on that.
Exactly.
Send the fly pack in. All right, well, let's get right into it. This was such a different debate, and we had a pre-Facebook Live check-in, and I think we all agreed that this was so substantively different from the debate that we saw between President Trump and Joe Biden last week. But this is the second debate in a row where there has not been an explicit conversation around LGBTQ experience, around where the issues that matter to us lie in this election, issues like marriage equality or non-discrimination, or as I know we'll talk about as a panel, the attacks that we've seen from the Trump administration. What is it? Let's throw this out to the group. What does it mean to you? What do we think it means for the race that LGBTQ issues weren't brought up? And what did you hope we were going to talk about tonight?
Yeah, well, I'll go. I think for me, it is a little concerning. And, for example, I tweeted yesterday, I did a consultation with like this precious lesbian couple, and they literally were coming to me. They're married and they have a daughter, and they want to make sure that their rights are protected as parents. And they want to make sure that, their paperwork and their will and their healthcare surrogacy surrogate paperwork and all of that stuff is where it needs to be. And it was heartbreaking to hear the concern in their voice. It literally, I don't really get emotional during my consultations, but I was getting emotional because I was thinking about my own marriage, and I was thinking about, we have to have these conversations. And literally they said, I just want to make sure, because if things go left on November 3rd, I need to make sure that, our family is protected. And I think at the end of the day, it's so important for folks in our community. We're voting with in mind that someone could literally rip apart our family. They could rip apart our rights. They could, everything that we have, the gains that we have made thus far, with the wrong, Supreme Court justice replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that could literally, dismantle everything that we worked for. And so it was disheartening not to hear that that subject brought up, especially with Mike Pence there, because he has been such a vile opponent of LGBTQ rights, period. He's a homophobe. I'm gonna say it like it is what it is. And so I think that should have been prosecuted tonight as well. His record on our community, that should have been prosecuted. So I was a little disappointed to hear that it wasn't.
Absolutely. Well, Rep. Smith, I want to throw this to you, but first, let me just say, for those of you who are joining us in Facebook land or watching us on YouTube, if you throw a question in the comment or a thought for our esteemed panel, we can see you. We see you. We're glad you're here joining with us. So if you have something you want to lift up or your favorite moment of the night, throw that onto the comment thread. Rep. Smith, you and I were talking about this earlier today. Representative Rayner just mentioned this. Mike Pence's long record opposing LGBTQ rights, from his time in Congress to serving as the Indiana governor. I think we had hoped that we were going to see a little bit more discussion of that tonight. What was your take on tonight's debate?
Well, my take was, first and foremost, even though we were really missing issues related to equality and the LGBTQ community, at least we got a discussion on the issues. We didn't get a discussion on the issues during the first debate because President Trump wouldn't keep his mouth shut. He wouldn't stop interrupting. It wasn't a debate. He completely denied the American people an opportunity to hear about the issues. And you could tell that was addressed right at the beginning of the debate, because the moderator, although she was speaking to both candidates, she was saying very clearly, we're going to follow the rules. So basically what she was transmitting is, don't ruin this debate for America like President Trump did in the last debate. But here's what is really, really important that folks understand. Vice President Pence has received probably the least amount of scrutiny on his record as governor of Indiana and as a member of Congress, more so than any other vice presidential candidate in the history of the United States. And yet, he has a tremendous amount of influence in the administration. He has brought in a number of extreme ideologues into the administration to start helping to set the policy, and we've seen that through the policy. But specifically about his anti-LGBTQ agenda, before he was even elected vice president of the United States, his agenda is so notorious that Donald Trump actually joked about him wanting to hang gay people. I mean, it's not funny, it's not a joke, but why did he say that? Well, because for years and years and years, Mike Pence has pushed and espoused conversion therapy, which we know is extremely harmful, especially for LGBTQ youth. Mike Pence really believes that someone can change their sexual orientation or their gender identity if they go through conversion therapy, which of course is totally false. He also is responsible for Indiana's right or license to discriminate law, where he basically enacted a law that allowed for businesses that were serving the public, businesses in housing, in public accommodations, in employment, any public space would be allowed to discriminate against LGBTQ people. And it was so bad that actually he tanked his economy as a result when businesses boycotted the state of Indiana. And he inspired other states like North Carolina to do the same. And that's without even touching on the issue of him opposing hate crimes protections for gay and trans Americans in Congress. That's without even addressing the HIV epidemic that he helped fuel by insisting on abstinence-only sex education and abstinence-only, not just for youth in our schools. He believes that abstinence-only is the solution for preventing the spread of HIV and other STDs for adults. I mean, he is so far right and so extreme that it's very easy to show folks that Kamala Harris and the Biden ticket are much more in sync with the American people and actually believe in fairness and equality.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned Indiana. I've been thinking about this as we've been preparing for the conversation tonight. Yeah, I think folks who are watching will remember that I served in the Florida legislature. I worked with Carlos in that role, and then following my time in the Florida House, I went to go work with the Human Rights Campaign. And in 2015, when the Indiana the Indiana religious discrimination law passed, I was actually deployed by HRC to Indianapolis. And the moment that I was sitting in the Indianapolis State Capitol was the moment after the state had started to hemorrhage $60 million because of Mike Pence's Religious Freedom Restoration Act, his RFRA that created a license to discriminate. And even after the state was bleeding, and in the middle of an economic tailspin, right? The concept of Hoosier hospitality is so important to the economy of Indiana, and conferences were pulling out, and the same thing we've seen in state after state. But Indiana was on the front line, even as that was happening, and Republicans in the legislature realized they made an error and tried to fix it. Mike Pence and his administration were quietly lobbying behind the scenes to erode the protections that were being built into the air quotes fix of that RFRA. It's really crazy. And Michael, I want to throw this to you. So Equality Florida Action Inc., who's hosting this Facebook Live tonight, made an unprecedented decision in our history as an organization. We have never endorsed in a federal election. We've never endorsed for president. And this year, our board was convened and called on staff to find a way to make that possible this year because the stakes were so high. We talked a little bit about Mike Pence's role on LGBT rights and his far right politics, and as far as it comes to LGBT rights and abortion. But since being in the administration, we have seen a consistent stream of attacks. Why do you think the Equality Florida Action Inc. board was called to make an endorsement in this race? What have the last 4 years been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been. I mean, you've lived it. We've all lived the trauma of the last 4 years, and I think that that's what motivated Equality Florida Action Inc. to make this unprecedented move. There's, I think just getting back to Mike Pence for 1 second, my only note is Mike Pence was operating at a loss tonight. Mike Pence was invited up on stage to defend the indefensible. He was going to lose, and he did lose. And it's incumbent on all of us, getting back to what Michelle said, that we, vote in the most important poll this year. That's what is at stake. That's what this is about. And that's what is incumbent of all of us to make happen.
Rep. Rayner, I want to throw something at you, and I let me take a moment to pause and remind our viewers on Facebook, if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, talk to us, throw comments in the thread. We can see you. We're eager to hear your questions. We have got a powerhouse panel of folks who have decided to stay up very late with us to audit this debate and figure out how it might infuse itself into into Florida politics and the Sunshine State, the most important political real estate in the country. But Representative Rayner, as I look at our panel here, it occurs to me that we have some history makers. We have Florida's first LGBT Latinx lawmaker, and we have joining with us, as you very well know, the very first Black queer woman in Florida to ever be elected to office, to any office, and certainly elected to the Florida legislature. Tonight we witnessed history. We saw for the first time a Black woman stood on a vice presidential debate stage. And I'm wondering what you think the significance of tonight means. What do you think it means to those who watch tonight? And what do you think it means for the election?
You're on mute, Rep.
Oh, I'm on mute. I was like, I was looking at it. It says unmute. I was like, am I muted? I didn't know. So, I think that, you're watching it as, as a Black woman. I'm like, wow, Kamala Harris. But I'm also watching this just tremendously capable woman. Just tremendously just intelligent woman who is just all of the things. And I think that as a woman, I think that regardless of whatever walk of life you're from, you're able to see a little bit of yourself in her, right? If you've held any type of position, you're able to relate to her in a way where this man was just speaking over her and literally had palpable disdain for anything that she was saying. And then just as a Black woman, I mean, there's just so much pride. She's a member of Divine Nine Greek letter organization, not my organization, but it's okay. We're supporting her. And understanding that she is so just representative of just many, Black women that I know, women who are in my circle. And, we're talking about Kamala Harris. And that's why we're kind of like, girl, like, you need to come on, but also understanding, even with that, there's some things of, I saw on Facebook, I feel like she's holding back. And I'm like, yes, these are conversations that we have as women. Do you hold back or do you just go full throttle? Because if you go full throttle, then it's going to be painted, oh, she's aggressive, she's this, she's that. And these are the things that you have to balance. These are the conversations that you have to have with your team. Do I want to be an angry Black woman? Do I want to be aggressive? Or how far do I have to go? And I was so proud of her to see that she held her own. I was so proud of her to see that she pushed back and she prosecuted the case against Donald Trump. And it just gives me such tremendous pride to be able to see Senator Harris in that position. There's no one better for this job. There's no one better to make the case. And I think that it was such a tremendous opportunity by Joe Biden to pick her as his running mate. But yeah, I mean, my group chat are in shambles. Everyone, we love Kamala Harris. We love her, and and here's the thing: Black women are coming out in droves to vote for her.
Yes,
believe that.
Yes. Okay, let's do this lightning round. I'm glad we're here. Best Harris moment of the night. There were so many. I was furiously typing. My fingers were bleeding. There were so many good moments. And I know in our little group text thread, we were lifting a few up, but round robin, best line of the night, best moment of the night. Michael, let's start with you.
It wasn't a line or a moment. It was her reactions to the outrageous things that he was saying. It was all in her face. She was speaking in that, and that was the best moment for me.
Rep Smith, what stood out to you?
There was a couple times where she really told the truth, and it really, really resonated. She specifically used the issue of truth against Mike Pence. She said, "You respect the American people when you tell them the truth." And right out of the gate, at the beginning of the debate, she reminded us that the Trump administration knew what was happening with coronavirus, and they didn't tell you. That is the truth. That is what happened when we heard the Woodward tapes where Trump was being interviewed, where he admitted that he knew that COVID was so much worse than the flu, that it was going to affect young people, that it was airborne, but that he basically was not going to tell the American people the truth. She was a truth teller, and that really shone through tonight.
Rep Rainer, what?
I have two moments.
Yeah,
One,
go ahead.
excuse me, VP, excuse me, I'm talking. And she goes, okay. And I like, that's right. Like, yeah. She's like, okay. And I was like, yes, get him together. And then when she, to Carlos's point, when she was talking about telling the truth, she said something to the effect of that Donald Trump has forfeited his right to re-election. And that, that to me was one of the most powerful lines that she said. Yes, that was so powerful because is right along. You did not only did you not handle this appropriately, you didn't tell the truth. And because of those things, you have no right to be reelected. And that to me was powerful. But there were so many things, but those are the two things that stuck out to me.
Well, you still want.
And there was no answer. No answer. I'm sorry. There was no answer right out of the beginning from Vice President Pence about why the death rate in the United States is 2.5 times worse than our neighbor to the north in Canada and worse than every other civilized country in the world. There was no answer.
He refused to answer it. He literally was like, well, let's talk about the swine flu. Bro, we're talking about COVID-19. That is what we're speaking about right now.
I wrote down three things that I think were the debate strategy tonight: smoke and mirrors, deflecting, and higher taxes. Those were the Trump strategy. That was it. The Trump-Pence strategy. That was it. They had nothing to add. And again, when you're operating at a loss, you're operating and defending the indefensible. What do you have other than trying to defend an abhorrent record? That's it.
Exactly. No answer on pre-existing conditions. What are you going to do about pre-existing conditions if you want to get rid of Obamacare? They have no plan. They've had no plan since Obamacare passed a decade ago. They have no plan. And there's no answer whatsoever from the vice president on whether he will commit to a peaceful transition. That's just outrageous. When has that happened in the history of our country? We have a lot of issues to talk about, but the idea that the Trump-Pence administration will not surrender power and when the American people vote them out is preposterous. It's scary.
It's scary because there was literally not a question that was asked of Mike Pence that was answered. And Mike Pence knows better. He alleges he's an attorney. That's what his Wikipedia said, because I had to look it up to make sure. Because the way he was asking these questions. And so you should know better. And, he should be very grateful that Kamala Harris didn't get into her litigator bag where she was like, sir, the question is a yes or no answer. Can you answer the question? That is not the question that was asked of you. And literally, I felt bad once again for the moderator because A, she was a woman. B, it was very clear that Mike Pence cared not to abide by the rules that they agreed to. And it literally was maddening to watch that there was literally no answer. Hi, what's your name? Well, let me tell you about my name. My name is derived from the English of, like, sir, we're just asking you your name. And that's literally what occurred.
It felt like it. Yeah, Representative Deidre Schubert in our chat is saying, topic, climate change. Let's talk about those taxes. That
Exactly.
moment, absolutely too. Absolutely too. But let's do this because we're getting close to our time, and I want to zero us in. There are two areas that I want to talk about, and then I have our lightning round that I want to make sure that we do. If you've got a question for the panel, let me just jump in here to say you are joining us on Equality Florida Action Inc.'s post-vice presidential debate stage with our esteemed panel, Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, Representative-elect Michelle Rayner, and Michael Womack, Equality Florida Communications Manager. Throw a question in the chat. We'll try and get to it before we wrap up here in just a few minutes. But Rep. Smith, let me give you this one. So we talked about how there was a clear omission of an express conversation around LGBTQ rights. And I know that there was advocacy to push the moderators, to push for the folks who hosted tonight's debate, the National Commission who hosts these debates, to include LGBT questions because the contrast on the positions between the candidates is so stark. And we often will see the Trump administration virtue signal. This was one of the points of discussion that has come up quite a bit, both internally for Equality Florida and as we're out there in the field. This idea that the Trump administration will hold up a rhetorical rainbow flag and somehow think that they will erode LGBTQ votes towards them. But we know that the Trump administration has taken policy positions that hurt our family. Talk a little bit about that. What's happened in the last 4 years, and why is that contrast so clear?
Okay, how much time do you have? Because there's no way I can go through the miles-long list of attacks that the Trump-Pence administration has made against LGBTQ people in the next 5 minutes. But I can give you the highlights. The highlights being that Mike Pence worked behind the scenes because he's transphobic and bigoted. He insisted on making sure that Trump erratically tweeted out policy for the United States that we were going to prohibit trans Americans from the military against the advice of all military leaders, because let's be clear, the facts and what folks are actually doing to defend our country don't matter. It's bigotry first in the Trump-Pence administration. They hired attorneys to try to make sure that we were not allowed to be reaffirmed as being protected from employment discrimination under the Civil Rights Act. They absolutely tried to deny us that, and they lost. Luckily they lost. And that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to taking away protections for LGBTQ youth in our public schools, when it comes to just the long list of things that they have done. I mean, we don't really have more time. I want to give it to someone else because I know that there's a lot more that folks want to bring into this discussion because it's just endless.
Well, let's go here. I want to. You brought up the Supreme Court, and this was the last place I wanted to go. Representative Rayner, the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett and the Supreme Court was discussed tonight. Not in detail. We didn't spend much time there, but it was brought up. And just this week, as the Supreme Court began its opening session, Justices Alito and Thomas made clear that they intend to subvert the Obergefell decision that won marriage equality. Justice Thomas wrote, I'm going to quote this for you, wrote in a statement in response to a case that was heard yesterday by the Supreme Court, quote, "The court has created a problem that only it can fix. Until then, Obergefell will continue to have ruinous consequences for religious liberty." You're a trained attorney who I know understands these issues well. For the average voter, for the pro-equality voter or the LGBT person watching today, what are the stakes at the Supreme Court right now, and why does the presidential election matter so much?
So, and I say this without being, I'm not being hysterical. I'm not being, exaggerating. The stakes have never been higher, period. We have a Supreme Court with at least 2 justices that we know of that are committed to rolling back rights for LGBTQ folks and women. We have a woman who I have no disparagement or no opinion on how she chooses to practice her religious beliefs, but has been tied very closely to organizations and religious sects that do not believe that LGBTQ folks should even have the right to exist. Like, let's just let that sit there. And she unfortunately judges and essentially rules in that way, in that frame. And she has said that, you know, her religious beliefs should play a part in how she decides cases. And so if we do not come out and vote for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and I really don't want to hear that Joe Biden isn't your guy, or this isn't the person that you really wanted, or, you know, we should do third party. Like, I don't have the time to hear that. I don't have that privilege to hear that, right? We don't have that luxury to hear about that. If we don't come out and vote, not only will you see Amy Coney Barrett get confirmed, you will see the rest of the vacancies in on the federal court seats get confirmed with complete ideologues, get confirmed with folks who have committed to repeal and push back rights of LGBTQ folks and women and Black folks and brown folks and immigrants and all of the things, and just of people being able to live. And so it's very concerning. It's very concerning that you have a sitting Supreme Court justice thinking about ways to overturn a law that is actually a law that the Supreme Court has, you know, passed, and so that they are looking for, essentially, and what they're saying is that you give us the right case. If we get the right case, we will then overturn the right to gay marriage. And that's just what they need, the right case. And we can't afford to have folks on the bench that would do that, and that would be willing to hold people's ability to love and to live in their hands because they simply don't agree with it, or their God tells them that they can't be in agreement with that. Because I love Jesus, and he didn't tell me any of the things he told Clarence Thomas. So, you know, there's that. So
here I'm seeing Joe Monin in our chat asking the question that is the $1 million question that not many folks have the answer to right now, which is there an opportunity to halt nominations? Is Amy Coney Barrett going to be voted on by the Senate?
She will be. She will be. I mean, she will be voted on, and I think she will be confirmed. I mean, unless there's going to be Republican, folks who will defect and say, you know what, and they may do that because their own political life is, hanging in the balance. But from what I've seen, that doesn't look like that will happen. But
what I was going to say is that there are 3 United States senators, Republican senators with COVID. The super spreader event has not been fully diagnosed. But you know what I'm reflecting on, Michael, is that as we think about what it would mean for the Supreme Court to take a turn to the right, as we acknowledge that we still don't know what will happen in terms of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's replacement, we know that Justice Thomas it is very possible that in the next 4 years, he may no longer be on the bench. There are judges who are getting older, which means the next president may have the ability to appoint a future judge. With all of those swirling unknowns in mind, I'm reflecting on the fact that we have a current state lawmaker right here. We have a representative-elect with us. We have a former state lawmaker here. And it reminds me how important our state legislatures are as the first line of defense. That as we start thinking about how things work in our judicial system, that what we see is cases like Obergefell tested with state laws. We see laws that are drafted by conservative lawmakers, and they make their way through the pipeline to test the boundaries of cases like Roe and cases like Obergefell. It is so essential that we have pro-equality lines of defense to protect marriage equality and to protect our rights. you've been an architect of Equality Florida's election center this year, which has a bunch of resources. Can I throw it to you to talk about that as we come in for a landing?
Yeah, just really quickly, the election center is built out. It's one of the most comprehensive places I've seen for LGBTQ people to get the resources they need to make the right decisions in the upcoming election. And it really underscores why organizations like Equality Florida need to exist, why the infrastructure has to be there in the states. And it underscores why this fight is not over. This fight didn't end with marriage equality. It takes us going to the state legislature and saying, no, you guys are kicked out. Let's put these good people in like Michelle Rayner and let's get this done so that we can keep this pro-equality movement
All right,
going.
well, we're coming in for a landing. We're actually 5 minutes over our goal time, which is fine. We knew we might do that. So as we wrap up this 11:28 evening, we're just gonna spend lots of late hours with each other. I wanna go into our lightning round. Okay, here's the quick lightning round. You have to answer it in 5. And Carlos, Representative Smith, I'm looking at you. 5 words or less, okay, to the following questions. We're gonna do 2 of them. First question, we're gonna start with Rep. Smith and go around. How do you plan to vote this year?
I'm voting by mail and dropping it off in the drop box.
Okay, good answer. That was more than 5. Michael.
Voting early, Biden-Harris.
Yes.
Oh, it's me. So I'm an election day purist. I always vote on election day. So I'm voting on election day for the Biden-Harris.
Mask in hand.
Mask in hand. Yeah, I'm a purist.
Got it. I have my absentee ballot. I'm casting it at a drop box. All right, next lightning round question. What do you do to manage election anxiety? Rep. Smith.
Got the Pinot Grigio right here for you.
Michael.
Drink and work hard.
So, oh God, I always, okay. So I doom scroll on Twitter and I always have a possible glass of wine somewhere near.
Just a little glass of wine. Well, my answer to this question is was going to be our last lightning round, even though we've lost time for it. It's Beyonce and Barbara. They are my solutions to all things. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you to our esteemed panel, Michael Womack, Equality Florida Communications Manager, State Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, the first LGBTQ Latinx lawmaker with lots of thoughts and feelings. Follow him on Twitter. He's got way more to say. Representative-elect Michelle Rayner, the first Black queer woman ever elected to any office in the state of Florida, and an amazing advocate for justice and equality. Thank you all for joining us. Y'all in Facebook land and YouTube land, we hope you enjoyed our commentary. Tune back in. We think we'll do more of these as we round out our debates and talk about what LGBTQ issues mean for the political climate in Florida, the most important swing state in the country. Thank you all for joining us.
Bye.